Doug, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
What is on your radar for the weekend?
I don't even know. I have no idea. I'm sure it's uh, some basketball. You gotta love a gymnasium in the wintertime. That's pretty cool. So we'll probably be doing some basketball, and I hope to be watching a lot of football. I love to watch NFL football.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Our church congregation historically meets in a bowling alley. And I was hanging out with a friend for dinner there last week, and we left. I think 10 minutes later, it caught on fire, and they've shut the bowling alley down for 3 weeks. So we are now meeting in a basketball arena. Is where we meet now. So that'll be part of our activity this weekend. And other thing I might do, I don't have too much going on. I might go to a baseball card show. One of our friends, uh,
You're channeling your inner 9-year-old self.
well, it's kind of like, have you been to one of these things recently?
No,
Yeah, it's like dudes my age that are strolling around with big wallets buying these expensive cards. But
that's awesome.
our friend Steve just likes to talk to him. He's in his 70s, and I'm just going over and check him out, see how he's doing. So it's over at
Cool.
Fisher's VFW, I think, and
Okay.
just a lot of fun things. Well, what else do you know?
Well, depending on where you're tuning in from, if you're tuning in from Florida, you can't embrace this, but one of my favorite inventions is the remote start. We have a ton of cars. We talked about cars last week and the benefits of them, but with a ton of cars means limited garage space, and my car sits outside, and so I'm just grateful for the remote starter. It de-iced my windshield this morning. Didn't you love the snow?
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It feels so good. But I'm grateful for the remote start. It started my day warm, and yeah, just to have warmth and comfort's great.
Technology is one of the things we're big fans of around here, and just something like a remote start is a big deal. And I'm listening to a book. I'm looking up the title for it right now, called The Mysterious Case of Rudolph Diesel.
Don't know.
Ever heard of Rudolph Diesel?
No, cool last name.
He invented the diesel engine.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the idea of somebody creating something so contrary to the culture and it evolving is just amazing. And so, like a remote car starter, a
Well,
diesel engine, or
e-
whatever.
even the remote starter, like what I have, it's an app on my phone. And
Wow,
you pay for it, but I could be at the Pacers game and start my car up wherever it is.
I love it. I
So you
love
don't
it.
even have to be within, 20 yards of it. So the innovation it's there, it's happening.
Well, that's a good lead in. I was working on some thoughts for a future anchor newsletter, and I was um, thinking of important ideas for one who wants to gain wealth, maybe a youngster or something. And the idea that struck me was incremental change or incremental thoughts. And the we've been incorporating a lot of incremental decisions here where you're not making all or nothing. And I'm not sure that the idea of incremental progress is as uh, vivid in the younger generation's minds as it maybe was for those of us that got a lot of years behind us because of the idea of some instant gratification from the telephone.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What's your earliest memory of?
Well, the whole idea that made me start thinking about it was the 1978 blizzard.
Okay.
And I left a basketball practice with my mom driving the car, and we started to the north side of Evansville and got on Petersburg Road, and it's a windy road around the golf course, and then it kind of winds up a hill. And mom got it stuck about halfway up the hill. And so all the people that were frustrated with her being stuck in the snow tried to pass. Well, they get about 10 yards in front of her and get stuck. And so to get up the hill, I had to just incrementally push people out of the way so I could push her out. But that snow, that you're probably a little too young for
Yeah.
that snow, but that snow just kept coming and coming. And the idea of dealing with the big snow is you just, if you're shoveling a driveway, you just got to do it a little bit more time.
Yeah.
You just got to gradually do it. And a lot of things in life are that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so whether it's investing, whether it's skills, whether it's personal health, all those things, they kind of, as I was thinking about it, they kind of merge together with an idea of really taking care of your finances in a pretty important way.
I didn't realize this, couldn't appreciate it, but I do now. And when I think about compounding, I think about the music that I used to play. And at one point in time, I was a fifth grader with a trumpet, and John Clark would sit down with me and we'd work on CGC, a low C, a G, and a high C, not too complex. But if you're in school for 180 days a year and 7 hours a day, that builds up over time, and you start reading music, you start working on tone and pitch, and next thing you know, you're playing triplets and you're challenging yourself with a piece like The Flight of the Bumblebee or something really difficult. And none of that happens without compounding what you can do.
Yeah. And that compounding happens from incremental efforts. You're doing a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, and so on. And so and where the idea of that happens is in the decision thought process, is that when uh, I was younger, every decision seemed like a big decision. It didn't really seem like you could break it down into a smaller
Yeah.
decision, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea that one of your kids might be trying to make a decision, and they're seeing it so big, and yet they might be able to break it down smaller to help them think through the process.
Well, to have somebody who can even look ahead for you and say, "Hey, this is a path," and then you get to the tough parts, and they say, "Hey, your thinking's wrong. You have some limiting beliefs here." Like you would say, who said that to you, or where did you learn that? Is that even a true thought? And so with money, how many of you could raise your hand and say, yeah, I've just had it Dave Ramsey'd out my whole life. I've just naturally been that way. Well, maybe you have, and if you have, if you're wired up that way, some of this compounding um, has been effortless, but maybe there's other areas that just aren't. And so you need somebody to unlock it for you and say, hey, where's that thinking even come from? Yeah.
Yeah, and where that thinking can become all these ideas I was thinking about, it can be very expensive, one way or another. Like a bad decision can be very expensive over time, and the bad decision could happen because you think you have to make all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I could start
Yeah.
uh like the compounding of my bad health started incrementally as a 30-year-old. I was working too long, so I didn't have time to exercise. I had a bunch of kids, so my health started going in a bad direction in my 30s. But incrementally, I started making small changes. So I one day decided, if I don't stop this, if I don't start taking better care of myself, I'm probably gonna die young. And the thought that hit me, the bad thought, was you can't even run a mile.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe I can't run a mile, but I can run to that building there.
Yep.
And so that was my incremental decision. I'm going to run to that building over there. And then the next day I'm going to run to the next building. And probably within, I don't know, it was probably 6 to 12 months, I ran a mini marathon. From that point of complacency
Right.
to actually changing my mind on something, and it's just a small way.
Here's a thought for you. This came up during breakfast this morning. The hardest part of compounding is to be around for it.
Be around.
like your life.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what a lot of these small decisions that are really important, they can be modeled for you. You can, if you're one of our friends says, "Are you open to feedback?"
Mhm.
You might need some feedback. Like
Yeah.
if you're going down a wrong path, and it may just be a small tweak in the direction you're going. But like bad health, maybe one of the most expensive problems, or a bad relationship with your spouse. You
Mhm.
just incrementally maybe start doing things that you're not considering them very well, and you're just kind of incrementally getting in a bad place. But it's a shift, just a small shift that, hey, um, maybe I should take her out for dinner tonight. Have a good
Yeah, I was
conversation.
recently asked about that in marriage, and one of the successes we've had is probably like this week we've had 100 countertop discussions,
I don't even know what that means,
like
actually.
just sitting around the countertop. Hey, what's going on? Or how you doing? Or it snowed. Like we're actually communicating together, and so just 100 of those little things really can stack up to greatness.
I was texting a financial advisor, a friend of ours, yesterday. He needed some help thinking about how to do his business a little better, and I had this idea that I had, so I texted it to him yesterday, and he said, "Well, I wasn't. I'm not up to getting together and feeling under the weather a little bit." And I thought, no big deal. So I went to my normal place where I run or walk or whatever, and I was walking, and I turned the corner, and there he and his wife were right there.
That's cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and what he said to me is, "Hey, Jenny and I were just talking that you texted me, and I need to get together with you and talk through this thing." And so the idea of you having countertop
Yeah.
decisions, he was incrementally just getting along with his wife and having a conversation about his day. And
Hmm.
these things, I haven't seen anybody really talking about these ideas as a financial thing, but these may be some of the most critical components of wealth management over time. It's how do you take care of relationships? How do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of setting money aside? You're saying you set it aside gradually, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then maybe even what if you kind of, like some of our friends here have done a nice job of accumulating. What if you accumulate and you've got more than enough? Do you just keep incrementally accumulating, or do you figure out a way to incrementally shift that thought process?
Yeah, you'll need some guidance with that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you're going from accumulation to distribution, or maybe distribution's even the wrong word, but just change.
right, right, right. Because those people that have great success with accumulating wealth, sometimes that even not only has challenged them with relationships within their house, maybe even it's caused them not to have a lot of friendships, where they could even, like, a lot of times that's what you use money for, is on friends and family and stuff. And so that incremental shift to being a workaholic,
Yeah.
and not even recognizing it's going on, then it could create the problem at the end. I got all this. We've got one of the pictures in the conference room of the I forget what it's titled, "Problem with Capitalism" or something like that, where the guy's just sitting on a big pile of money, doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, be sad.
Be really weird.
Yeah.
Be really weird. I don't know. I'd throw that out there to you guys, and I'm just curious what incremental things you've learned over time that have helped you, incremental things that you'd pass on to your kids that it might be helpful to them, or your grandkids. And shoot us an email. Let us know some things that are incremental changes you've made, incremental decisions you've made that have been a big impact on your life for you.
One of the big changes we've made is just the way we buy and sell stuff. And with investments, I used to be of the mindset, okay, you buy this and you hang on to it forever. So you'd buy a allocation of something, meaning you might have 25% in a large cap growth fund. You might have 10% in a small cap and some bonds and some international, et cetera, et cetera. And then you just hold on to that forever, and you ride through all the waves of the marketplace or the economy. And what I've been learning since really the financial crisis of 2008 is you don't have to do that. You can think differently, and there's different ways to protect your capital through just small decisions. And those small decisions, you may be right, you may be wrong, but you can still increase or decrease your exposure to risk and opportunities at just a small piece at a time. And looking back, that's worked out reasonably well.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's thoughts that or even incremental thoughts that just come at you day to day, right? Like in those thoughts, they influence you, they direct you, they set your mind in places that they may not be true thoughts of.
Right. Right.
And
You'll probably be wrong.
right, in a lot of things.
Yeah.
And one of those that I've talked about is that nobody prior to the 1980s, I don't think did a buy and hold strategy.
Right. Right.
And that buy and hold strategy that most people believe is the way, it was incrementally presented to investors through the mutual fund industry because they make a lot more money if you ride out and don't get rid of their fund, because if you sell their fund, you might end up buying somebody else's.
Right.
And so that idea was just a gradual incremental thing that they've been very successful at presenting that idea.
Yeah, the marketing efforts have been pretty strong too, and it makes some sense.
Yeah.
I mean, inside the mutual fund, there is a manager or a team of managers that are buying and selling little pieces, making shifts. Even the S&P 500 itself, I mean, it has changes, but you're still kind of locked into that path.
Well, it's a great way to accumulate wealth because you're dollar cost averaging, you're putting a little bit in there. The thing that most of their data says, like, this is going to work out for you, and then they'll give you probably a 50-year chart.
Right.
And the reality is it probably will, but you may not have 50 more years to live. And in that, if you break that 50-year chart down into 10-year segments, there's broad swings in that valuation. And if one of those downswings hits you while you need it in retirement, it's going to have a big
your cash flow needs change, your family needs, you didn't see this or that coming. Maybe your kid has something going on that wasn't in the chart.
I presented an incremental change idea to my uncle last night. He's in an assisted living. He doesn't really, that isn't his choice of where he would be, right? But for some reason, in the last 30 or 40 days, he got good hearing aids, I think, but his hearing has gone even worse. And it's just nearly impossible to communicate with him. And you can see the frustration with him. But the incremental change I made was, because I'll go in, and if I was here and you were my uncle, you start yelling at me because you can't hear yourself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're
And then
upset.
it frustrates me because I'm like, I'm right here.
Right.
But if I say something, he can't understand what I'm saying. We've got a whiteboard in there and stuff. And so I made the incremental decision this week. I sent him an email. I said, hey, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna send you some questions before I come
Okay.
that you can read those. And then we'll just talk about them. I'll nod while you're telling me what you think about them. But if we're trying to converse 90% of our time when we were just trying to converse was him yelling at me trying to figure out how to even, like, we're not getting anywhere. And so we had to incrementally shift what we were doing, or we would probably both been frustrated with one another.
That has good time component too. It gives you something to look forward to. There's a start time and there's an end time. The questions are over.
Yeah, it was really profitable because with his hearing being bad, I'm like, I don't even know what to ask him half the time. But with this, I can ask him some thought-provoking questions and just listen.
Yeah.
And like one of the questions I asked him was, what was one of the things you've learned from not being able to hear? And he was like, you can tell he was frustrated by the question, or what's been one of the benefits of not being able to hear. And what he said was he has to listen better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is a huge thing for all of us. If we can all learn to listen better, the world's going to be a better place. But all of this conversation came from me shoveling a driveway in 1978, just one scoop at a time, clearing the path, and just realizing that when you take things inch by inch, life's the cinch.
Yeah.
How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time?
Yeah.
So our company didn't get here today to plow the.
Oh, you did all that?
I did the Gimbal driveway.
Oh, I thought it was plowed. Nice job.
No.
Nice job.
And
What
so
time did you get here? About 5?
No, I just was doing it in like 15-minute increments.
Man, nice.
And I would get cold, I'd come in. And one of the things about doing things incrementally and not just burying your head is you can have your head up and look around. And one of the things I saw out there today while I was shoveling is a bald eagle flew over.
Yeah, right on. Right
And I
on.
was like, how cool is this? I could be angry that I'm out here
Yeah.
shoveling the driveway, or I was just relaxing and looking around and the eagle just soars right past me. And so if
Yeah.
you take life more incrementally, I think you're going to enjoy the ride more too.
Well, imagine the challenge it's going to be in the future. Like technology's getting better, AI, there are drugs out there that cancel out bad decisions.
Yeah.
And so if you have a lifetime of stacking up some bad decisions and you can take a pill that erases it, you've just missed out on the joy of how food's produced.
Right.
You've missed out on the joy of cultivating something or growing something or hunting something. And all that is erased in just one pill.
That's hilarious that you mentioned that. I've got a letter to a friend that I was writing about that idea, probably about 2 or 3 weeks. I'm sanding it down, but I went through a bout of depression in 1992. And I love all you Eli Lilly friends that are out there today, but just a few months before that, they came up with a drug as well as other ones that would address depression.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into big opinions about it, but the primary reason I got into depression was I was thinking wrong. And if I had taken pills to numb out the feeling that I had, I wouldn't have had to stop and think better about my life. And so it was a really hard, that was like a hard period of time because it went on for probably 100 days, maybe 70 days. And it was just, each day was an incremental thing. I had to get up today and decide, am I gonna go to work and pay attention today, or what am I gonna do? Am I stay in bed? And so it was one step at a time on that process. But when I thought about it, is now we're almost one generation away from that time when that drug came out. And so a whole generation of people have lost the idea of maybe I'm thinking wrong
Yeah.
and maybe I need to change, because what you're saying about a decision, like when I bought, this was about the time I bought my first house and I'd never had a mortgage. And so that was weighing on me, that like I got the weight of the world of this mortgage.
Mm,
And a simple change of thought was I can sell this house anytime.
that's right.
Right.
That's
And
right.
that's all I had. Like that thought was
It's
I can
wonderful.
sell the house and get rid
Yeah.
of the mortgage. I may lose some money,
Yep.
but that took the burden. And
Yeah. What a
that
great
was,
thought.
yeah. And so thinking differently is really incrementally, because you have to figure out where I'm wrong.
Yeah. And that's where it might take some friends.
Exactly. Well, sorry about getting off the beaten path, friends, but this was just something that just banged around in my head this week that made sense. Let's look at the market, Doug, shall we?
Sure.
Uh, Let me share my screen with you, friends. I just pulled up the industry group. I'm going to pull up the NASDAQ and let you tell me what you think about what's going on over there.
Well, I mean, I like what I see. The NASDAQ is just hanging out. We're battling for price. Nothing too dramatic has been happening over the last several weeks. We had a great run towards the end of last year, which was very much needed. But right now we're just kind of hanging out, and there are more companies out there than just the Magnificent Seven that you all hear about: the Apples, Amazon, Netflix, Google's, Nvidia's, Tesla. Did I miss?
You got a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but there's more out there, and there's more contributors. Maybe it's the person who is inventing the remote start from your iPhone. I don't know, but I like what I see. I think it's very healthy. I think it's constructive. We're still way ahead of the 200-day moving average. What is it, Keith? What are we at right now?
The NASDAQ's at 15,101, 102, and the 200-day moving average is 13,557.
So we're up, what did that say, 11% north of the 200-day?
11.4.
So eventually the 200-day will catch up, get closer to the prices. Um, and so I think we're in a great time. We're leveling off. I think the headwinds could potentially be rates. Um, I saw where Kathy Woods. Did you see this? And I like Kathy Woods. I'd like to hang out with Kathy
She
Woods.
manages fund that was a rocket ship, what, 2 years
Well, and
ago?
it's really been good.
Yeah.
I mean, she's amazing.
But it's that volatility
Yeah.
thing, right? Like what, because I forget how much it went up, but
A
it
lot.
came all the way back down.
But hey, she's amazing. And but she was calling for like, I don't even want to say how many I think it was, but several rate cuts this year.
Right.
And that may happen.
Right.
That may, but it may not. And so instead of getting ahead of ourselves, let's just listen to what the market tells us. And I think what it's telling us is that these prices where it is right now is pretty reasonable. They've been hanging out here for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. The let's look at the volatility real quick to show what that looks like. So we were talking several weeks ago that we'd really love to see this. The volatility index here tells you what this measures, the volatility of stock options, but it gives you a flavor of the volatility that's in the stock market. And the market does much better when it trades, the VIX trades below 20. And we had, a little bit of hectic activity going on in the fall, but since then we've seen that rally. Volatility's dropped out of the market, and um, it just makes it a lot easier to hold on for investors when you're not going through. I think this was,
Look at how high that was
yeah,
back.
yeah, that was really high. And what's really interesting is if I change this to 21, we went from a high a while ago that was at 35. We were saying how high it is. And the government's response to COVID shot the volatility up
Yeah.
to almost unprecedented levels.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting thing to.
But even not too long ago, I mean, it was trending up this July through October. That was pretty intense.
It was, and then we had, we came out of the market for a lot of clients over here in the end of 22,
Too.
and the volatility, like it just was a roller coaster through that year, and just a hard time for anybody to do anything. And so, if our friend Mark Minervini, who has been really good at making money over time, he talks about a volatility contraction pattern, and essentially what he's saying is when you have this volatility right here, is it if that volatility contracts like that, a lot more often than not, that's a really optimistic thing
Yeah.
for the investors.
Yeah. Hey, pop the Dow Jones up if you would. I know we don't talk about this one a whole lot. This is 30 stocks. And the Dow Jones, look at that climb.
From 32 to 38
Yeah,
here almost.
and I like the way this is looking too. It's just kind of hanging out. I I had anticipated that that the prices would really go down.
On this one.
Yeah, and I was wrong. It's been just hanging out, and it's been allowing the averages to start to come up to the prices. And so I found it really interesting, the strength and the broadening of investment opportunities. It's not just all tech.
And diversification is really good. That's something we try to incorporate for you. Like Boeing, I don't even know want to throw a dad joke out there, but they've made some bad decisions, and their stock just has come down pretty dramatically in the last couple of weeks. And so those components of diversified portfolios sometimes can go all over the place. So like if you've got a concentrated holding, um, there are strategies to take a concentrated holding and get it more diversified, so you're not at risk.
And one way to do that, and we're not recommending Boeing, and we're not recommending this next one I show you, but would you type in Jets? So what Jets is that this is an ETF, and so this is going to try and capture the industry, and so this would have some Boeing in it, but this would have several other companies in it. And sometimes what you find is when you look at a company or you look at an ETF, uh, the ETF, it's basically just going to be a reflection, sorry, it's a reflection of the companies inside of it. And so it tells us, hey, what industries might we want to be in, or what do we want to avoid? And Keith and I, we look at these every Monday. We look at the screens that show us several different leading industries. And this would qualify in the let's avoid category.
And I just compared Boeing to jets, just to give you guys an example of what diversification could do for you. And if I didn't put in a recent Gimbal newsletter, it's coming out. I was talking about that probably concentrating your investments when you're young is probably worthwhile.
Oh
And
yeah.
as you get more mature, when you're young like you can
Yeah,
you
right.
can
Yeah.
concentrate. When you get more mature, you need to diversify. And you can see that like when Boeing takes off, it's going to do a lot better than Jets is, but it's going to give it all back, just like what we were talking about
Yeah.
what Kathy Woods Fund did. And so
Old or young or mature or unmature, you have to have a strategy.
right.
You gotta have a parachute out.
Yeah, and I could ramble on about the heartache that I've seen people go through that have been concentrated and haven't
Yeah.
diversified it. And the reason that it causes problems is psychological, is that this stock has always made me money. It can never go down. And
Yeah.
the answer is it can. And it may be the best brand name that you know. You know, we
Yep.
had Enron that everybody wanted to own the early part of the century. We had WorldCom. We had a number of companies that nobody ever thought that anything would change with them. General Motors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. We are grateful to take part of your Friday. And like I said, if you've got any insight for us on incremental decisions or actions you've made, we'd love to hear about it. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Bye bye.